Best stream ever. Welcome to Live at the Hive, everybody. I'm Dan Adelko. This is my co-host,
Courtney Castle.
And we've got today
Megan Roach
on Team Honeypot. This is Megan's first live stream.
False. It is my third.
Is it?
Third live
Oh yeah, I was
stream.
gone. No, I was
She
gone.
made some secret appearances while you were.
We've never been on a stream together. Have we?
Have you?
Yes,
Were
it was
we?
before Christmas.
Before
it was
Christmas.
Early,
Oh.
an early
in
young
the early episodes.
Okay,
Yeah.
in the early days, before we had the tannery studio and everything.
Yes, before we were so official with our setup now.
Courtney, do you want to tell everybody about the cabinet? We know this was a big deal last week, so this week we resolved the issue because what Courtney wants, Courtney needs, and Courtney gets.
We make updates to our setup every week, and I was saying we should tell everyone that we've added a PC to our setup so that we can do more advanced sound effects and things like that.
That's not what I was talking about.
But Dan is very excited about the fact we've added a cabinet behind us so that we can feature different objects from the office.
That's right.
And our marquee sign with our hashtag Live at the Hive.
That's
if you
right.
Feel so inclined to use it.
Our C3PO mug from Samantha.
Yep, from Samantha.
Yep.
Thank you, Samantha. Hope Capstone's going well now that you're back at Conestoga.
Don't melt down.
You're almost there. 3 more weeks, and our interns will be out in the industry and doing everything we taught them and everything they've learned. So awesome.
Yeah, very cool. And so what we did get was picked up a new streaming PC that will be able to handle multi-streaming and all the different scenes and things like that. Our laptop was just kind of chugging along a little bit, working a little bit too hard. So we went and upgraded that, and it's already working more smoothly. And also because of that, today we are live on Facebook, we're live on Periscope/Twitter, and we're live on YouTube Live. So we're on 4 total channels. But yeah. Distribution, right? And we can also be super fancy and do something like this. There we go.
So fancy.
It is super duper fancy.
That's
and
the fanciest part.
Yeah, the fanciest part is it actually is working. And I think I've got everything set up right there. So we'll just cut back here. So what are we talking about today on Live at the Hive?
So today we are going to be focusing on content marketing and many aspects of it and how it supports your other marketing efforts as well, and just some of the key processes and strategies we use on a daily basis. We do a lot of content marketing at Honeypot. That's why I've asked Megan to be on the live with us today. She heads up a lot of our social and content programs. So yeah, we're just going to give you a little peek behind the curtain at how we actually produce these long-form blog posts, things like that, social media content for numerous channels, and yeah, basically how you stay on top of that ball. So
yeah, it's and Courtney is a huge fan of content marketing. I certainly am as well. You know, I think one of the key things in terms of content, especially in the last couple of years, is it's so noisy with advertising. In fact, just as a minor sidebar, it's coming out that Facebook is very close to hitting 100% ad inventory on Facebook, which is pretty astonishing considering the size of Facebook, regardless of everything else. But
and just the speed of adoption is like what you'd call it, is that like 3-4 years ago you would have to explain to someone and like really try to convince them to put any ad spend on Facebook, and now it's what people want the most. So
yeah,
it's really like just for that to happen so quickly is also quite impressive. But yeah, also somewhat concerning as a marketer. You do have to be aware of saturation and things like that as well.
Yep.
But
well, and that leads to increased cost because it is a bidding engine. And one of the ways to get around that is obviously to be creating consistent content and high quality content and content that's relevant and valuable to your audience, right? But that is easier said than done. And to be efficient with it.
Megan's shirt is getting some love.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. I figured it would. Megan, can you explain the shirt to everybody that might not get it?
It's very snowy here in Kitchener-Waterloo today, just in case you're watching from somewhere where you didn't get hit with winter on April.
It's true. I woke up and it was very snowy, so I picked out an appropriate shirt.
Can Megan explained the sweater to me, and I was like, thanks.
It's not an ugly Christmas sweater.
Well,
There's a sloth. You go slow. There we go. You go slow in the snow like a sloth.
There you go.
It is ugly though.
There you go. And again, that's all a matter of taste. That's all a matter. Nira's giving you some claps, some applause for that.
There you go.
Thanks,
I mean, I think that's what she's applauding
I think
anyway.
that's what Nira's
Not
applauding. Maybe
entirely
she's just
sure.
excited.
Okay, so getting back on topic here, a little bit about, so we can just jump over now, the super duper fancy, I have to figure out which mouse, our super duper fancy, we can actually pull up the agenda. And so when we're creating content and content calendars, and we actually have a kind of, right now it's kind of rough, but a visualization of how to create content effectively and efficiently, because the biggest challenge, and we all run into this, is I've got to create social content on 5 or 6 channels. I've got to write blog posts. I've got to, I've got to write email series. I've got to do a webinar.
You've got to write print materials to support the sales team. It's really content on all levels, really. If you're a content creator and a content marketer, it's really just being more of a marketing generalist, really. Content is really a part of all. Content could be writing ad copy as well, right? Or having a lead magnet, which would be like a PDF or something like that you could also advertise with. So
that's right.
It's the helping hand of all your marketing channels, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things is, how do we create content efficiently without writing the next great American novel that probably is not even on point or consistent? Mm-hmm. And that's like the hardest thing in the world, is to take all of this content across all of these different channels, and on social, as Megan can attest to, a unique voice for each channel.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, like figuring out, especially when you're working on multiple different channels as well as like multiple different brands, like figuring out if you're switching between different brands on a day-to-day basis, you kind of have to have that tone figured out, right? Right.
And your voice on LinkedIn would be very different than your voice on Instagram, for example, right? So those kind of compound all of the challenges that we have in terms of being efficient and timely. And you typically, we might have 4 or 5 people that distinctly all have different voices. And how do you align that? And how do you get efficient? And how do you remain consistent at the same time? And that's kind of the topic of what we're going with today, because fundamentally with e-commerce or B2B, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Maybe you're selling a course, maybe you're selling a SaaS product. The content that you can create will really differentiate you from the crowd. As an example, the Buffer as a social media planning tool is in a pretty saturated market, very competitive. They kind of came out of nowhere, but they were writing really great content from day one. Yeah,
Buffer is a great blog for marketers to follow. I've been following it, since I was in school. And just an example of a common question we get asked, I think the total right now is up to about 2 million blog posts are published every day. And so with more content being published today than ever before, and also with the trend of long form content, which is anything that exceeds about 1,500 words, being the trend and the way to break through, the question is really like, how do I actually get attention ahead of all these other blog posts on the exact same topic, trying to do the same thing? And the key is really the quality of it. And that's why long form is very popular right now. Like we said, not a little blog post that's like 300 words. You will actually get de-ranked for a blog post of that length or a page of that length by Google. But basically, what is the process that we use if we are putting out these 2,000 word articles that have to be high quality but also produced in a timely manner? Like, how are we doing that?
Well, that's a fantastic question, Courtney.
Well, Dan.
You just fed me that one. Okay, so the process that we use is called content blocking. And really, and we'll get a better version of a visual of this out, is you really want to start with what we would call anchor or cornerstone content, which is exactly that 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 word blog post as one example. Another great example of the cornerstone or anchor content would be a webinar, because you'd have a 30-minute webinar with tons of content in it.
For sure. Yeah.
Podcasts can also be long form as well. And videos, if they tend to be longer, right? Sure. So just to illustrate, so we take the cornerstone content. Let's say you're going to start to create that, but you have to have a starting point. Let's see if I can just zoom in a little bit here for you and make sure that everything's good here. And zoom in a bit. But you can see here, this is just a sample of an actual template that we do use ourselves. And really the kind of idea here is when you're writing 1,200 to 1,500 to 2,000 words, it's really easy to lose yourself on the fourth paragraph if you just sit down and you start typing. So to start creating that, we use this process called content blocking. And content blocking really is in a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet is starting out here. Oops, wrong one. Starting out here and defining your intro and your goal, really. So I'm going to write a blog post about writing amazing content, right? Well, what's the goal coming out of that initial piece of content? And that will help keep me on point. This is prior to writing anything. It's prior to, this could also be a script for a video or a podcast as well. It doesn't have to come out as written content. And then what we'll do is you start to, you could ideate alongside with Andrew Webb. I'm just joking. I'm just teasing a little bit. But you have a brainstorming session prior to doing this. You could use a mind map. You can use a whiteboard. You can just scroll down notes. There's lots of different ways to do it. Coming out of that, you're going to have some bullet points. And it's really the best way to start is to say, my goal here is to have the reader come out and understand how to create an amazing content piece that's 1,200 or more words long. Okay, so that's great. You have the goal. And then what we want to do is start to fill in your first point. What is the first thing you're going to say after that intro? What's the first piece of information? And just write that out, and then add some detail to that. Then write your second point. And this is actually called outlining from a writing perspective, is starting with your outline. If you were ever had to write papers in school.
Yep, this is ringing a bell in any of your essay writing experience. This is exactly what you do. You go through with your thesis statement would be your intro, your goal for the piece, and then, each of your three arguments being, your points as you work through the piece. But it's just to make sure that you're on point. You don't want to pour a bunch of work into a piece and then have to go and pare it down. And you end up putting time into writing, 500 words that are going to get edited out and removed in the end. Mm-hmm. It's really about efficiency at this point, because consistency is key. So if you're taking, if you follow this structure, it may take half the time to produce that blog post. So.
Exactly. And the other cool thing about this format here is you can see, I've got it zoomed in pretty heavily so it's easier for people to see. But this zooms out, and we use this method quite frequently. So if we were writing 3 or 4 pieces and we had 3 or 4 different people writing each one, they are able to collaborate side by side and see the process, so that our 3 pieces need to work together. They can't work independently. They can't have a different voice. And as the 3 content creators are working their way through each of these, they can see what their peers are doing and able to move their work closer together. And what that helps us do is it helps us iterate and be efficient without saying, Megan, Courtney, and myself, we all spent 3.5 hours writing 1,500 words, and none of it makes sense together. And then you have to go back. That's never happened. That's happened to all of us, is basically what I'm saying. So using this process, and it's very simple, you're able to, we went through this process not so long ago with a client project with a very tight deadline, and we found that we had written about 80% of the total word count prior to even putting it into the blog format, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think that this format and that specific example was for a series that we were leveraging. It was some new keyword opportunities that we wanted to target for organic search traffic,
yep.
which is a very typical reason to create a long form blog post strategy. And very often, like, whether you shouldn't be really creating one-off blog posts, you should be thinking in series format, because series allows for natural things like internally linking to one another. And when you're looking at it in this kind of a view, it's, to Dan's point, mm-hmm. you can make sure that the posts flow into one another, and that natural experience is just naturally they would link to one another and continue to engage those people, so you can see things like bounce rates going down and pages per session going up, as well as traffic.
That's right. Yeah. So really starting with it's creating these document outlines. And again, the whole concept of having this cornerstone or anchor content is it becomes the content that is repurposed into everything else, yeah. Right? So quite often what does happen is you'll say, okay, we have a project, folks. We've got our email marketing team, our social media team, our writing team, and our webinar team. and everybody comes together and has a great idea. And then what ends up happening is everybody goes to their corners and starts writing. You're kind of writing from the top down if you're writing for social first, right? To tell the story, starting with the cornerstone content and working your way up is an extremely effective way. So the social team will receive the drafted blog posts, and from that, there's going to be at least, well, in our document here, if we were to look at it, if we were to look at our document here, we would have at least 5 salient points that could be easily fit into a tweet or a LinkedIn post, and then that becomes the destination for social. So it really makes, then the social team, they're able to think more about the voice and the hook and how am I going to attract that person, right?
For sure. And even if, if you don't have, perhaps you're a one-person content machine and you are creating content for social as well as blog and email, what we'd recommend, one thing that is a favorite tactic of ours, is that don't consider, like, once you've just created the blog post that you're done with the project. While it's fresh in your mind and you've just written on the topic and you have all this information that's in your words, create content for repurposing and distribution. So instead of handing the article off to, say, a social media manager who then has to read through the article, understand the topic from scratch, and then pull points out for you, why not, while you're right then and there, create 5 social media posts from your blog or your article? And people tend to take the headline very often, and there's nothing wrong with that. You've probably you should have spent a long time crafting that headline to make sure it's a perfect hook. So that can be used as the social post, but consider that also quotes, like sound bites from the article, can be lifted and quoted. There's also like other headers that are within the article also make for good points as well when you're looking for summaries. So just consider it more of as a package and repurposing it in real time so that when you do get to distribution, you can just hand that off to another team member or schedule the posts and the emails yourself. And it really just leverages and makes sure that you aren't putting all your time into production and only like 5%, 10% of your time into actually marketing that piece of content.
Yep. So we've got a question here from Jacqueline Mayo asking, does adding photos with the title tags to your blog post help with SEO the same as web pages with images on your corporate site? Yes. So the answer to that is yes. Jacqueline. And actually, you bring up a really good point about what we would call depth to a blog post or a page on the internet. And really what Google and all the search engines look for is, yes, you want to have that content. And we'll speak after this a little bit about how you format the content for the web, because it's a little bit different than traditional writing. But you also want to include outbound links, images, if there's related infographics, and then yes, use the title tags. And this is something that a lot of people, I think, miss and get a little bit wrong. 80% of SEOs that I've ever seen in my many years of doing this actually forget the very, very basics, which are the alt tags, the meta descriptions, the title tags. Those are incredibly important, and not just the photo of the graphic or whatever, the chart. Taking some time, because that can, when the spiders read that, it gives them additional information for indexing. And quite often, even the image name is actually important. So if you have test image 1_v4_finished.jpg or PNG, which happens all the time, you should actually make that image title related to the content in the blog post, because that also gets indexed. So it's a great question, but yes, images with alts and title descriptions in there, all of the metadata throughout the entire thing is extremely important. And again, it's the first thing that everybody misses.
For sure, and that's all related to, like, under the SEO umbrella. Obviously, content is very heavily under there. That's about backlinking and things like that. So that when you have these external links that, perhaps having one photo with one of your keywords in it that in a Google image search leads to your site, well, no, that's not really going to get you a lot of traffic. But if you can imagine, when you're consistently producing this content and always using those best practices, we manage sites that have thousands of photos that are then actually directing substantial traffic to the site.
Yeah.
And that's just through all types of backlinks. It could be an image, it could be a video link, it could be social media posts themselves act as backlinks as well.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. And one of the things to keep in mind with SEO is it's a marathon, not a sprint. So if you're starting out, it can be a little bit depressing. And we have a number of examples that we can throw up later where you see, 100, 150 unique sessions a day, and that goes on for a few months or a couple of months, and then all of a sudden when you get picked up and your trust rank on Google goes up, it literally just goes straight up. And then you've gained that. We've seen that a number of times on a number of blogs that we've worked on. And so that persistence and that consistency is extremely important. Don't stop doing it because you're a month in and it doesn't seem to be gaining traction. It will gain traction if you're consistent.
Yeah, and that's why this kind of structure and process when you are producing content is so important. Oftentimes people, perhaps you happen to one day crank out a blog post and you love it, it's awesome, but then you don't find time to do it again and for another 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's really shooting yourself in the foot. It's better to just aim for a consistent, reasonable goal in terms of frequency, especially if you're writing for many different content channels. So
yeah, and it's quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
So if you have more limited time, I would suggest investing into one longer piece that you then distribute and find partners to distribute it with, than trying to do numerous shorter pieces. Those will get, as Courtney mentioned before, they actually in fact can turn into penalties. If you have a whole bunch of 200-word posts, that'll become a search engine penalty.
I believe 750 words is currently being advertised as the sweet spot in terms of if it's a page or if it's a blog post. So really a lot of people tend to think like, I know this is only 200 words, but I need to get something up. Nothing's been published on the blog. Like, consider that you actually might be just hurting yourself putting up something that short form. So, but yeah, in order to gain that kind of consistency, we brought Megan to talk to us a bit about calendars and planning out your content so that you can get to that level of consistency and get that organic search traffic up.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
So having content calendars, obviously, like creating a plan, especially, I know we'll do them a month ahead, having that plan, knowing what you're going to be talking about for that whole month, it definitely helps you out, especially being like, okay, so I need this blog done here, I need this blog done here, I need this blog done here, and again, then that way, and especially when you have like the word counts laid out for you as well, then that way you kind of know, okay, you're going to be able to actually like crank out these, and if you have ideas already, it's really easy to kind of just start get going with that because all that's already done for you instead of you're staring at a blank page and okay, now what? Where do you go from there, right?
Yeah, and another thing that I would suggest to everybody doing either social or content is look back in your Facebook Insights or your analytics, whatever analytics, Twitter analytics, Facebook analytics, Google analytics. Go back for the last year of your activity and find out what you've done that works and do more of that.
Yeah, and like the same thing too, like for when you're doing not necessarily just a content calendar with like your blog post, but your social calendars. Yeah, if you even just blocking out a social calendar before you're writing the content. So this piece here, so on this day we're gonna have a carousel, on this day we're gonna have a blog post, on this day we'll have say like a photo post or a video post, right? Blocking out a content calendar for social works as well. And then again, instead of just going in there and having a blank page.
And having
advice.
Having a preset calendar on social helps, like what Megan's describing, is to plug things in so that you get out of that wheel of what am I going to post and posting for the sake of posting. It helps, like, content should really support your other activities. If you're just posting on Facebook just for the sake of having a presence on there, probably not worth your time. It's really good because we can see, okay, we're running a particular ad campaign in the last week of the month. We should have some social content around that topic that supports those efforts. And perhaps our client is attending a live event that is focused in a particular industry. Then we know that for that we can engage socially with those accounts. We can speak to that conversation and make sure that content, and especially social media, is really supporting your other efforts and working in tandem with them. And it's not just like a nice to have thing. It really will drive traffic for you and drive leads. So
yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing, and this is especially top of mind right now with what's happening with Facebook, beyond all the politics of everything else, is that algorithm is changing they are truly making moves like right now, every day. And so what worked last week, last month, won't work probably next month. So you have to be really agile and kind of on top of what's happening. As an example, if you follow our brand page, you'll notice that we're leaning in more heavily obviously into live video, but into video, mainly because image posts and brand pages were being suppressed.
Yep.
Now, we see really good feedback when we do things like International Women's Day, community events that tend to engage with our local community and with our peers, which is fantastic. And we're also seeing, obviously, live video is having a great, I think we're crossing over 17,000 views on our series, which is great. And those things have a life and a consistency that keep the content engaged. But if you're sitting there with your Facebook strategy, but Instagram's the same, Twitter's the same, LinkedIn is the same. If you're doing the same thing every single month that you've been doing for months on end, take a good hard look at what you're doing and find people to emulate.
Yeah. For sure, and that's part of what the purpose is. Like, to Megan's point, we create our calendars a month at a time to kind of give us that consistency and that freedom for planning. But we also need it there so that we have the flexibility to do other things and pivot as well. So that when we look at the end of the month, we are constantly in a state of production. Megan and the team and the rest of us all look at analytics as well. What performed best? We don't just create the exact same calendar. We'll eliminate things that didn't perform and add new features as well as we test. And pretty much are constantly testing different content tools. Yeah. I know sometimes I'll just be playing with random apps and I'll bring them into the office for everyone to test. They're fun.
They are.
Even if you're just trying out doing content calendars, if you're your first one and you don't really actually know what works for you, just test a whole bunch of all you need to do is test. I feel like you can't stress testing enough, as you don't know until you test it, right? And if it fails, then you know it doesn't work.
That's right. And then you'll find the gems within all of that. So yeah, failure is good. We've been working on Instagram with the engaging with mid-range hashtags, which is a strategy that was just a test to see if it would work, and it does work. So yeah, these algorithms move so quickly, and they change. They're not telling anybody when it changes, right? You find out after the fact, unless it's something earth-shattering. But yeah, totally agreed that there's nothing better than testing and failure. You often learn a lot more from failing than you do from succeeding, which sounds corny, but it's actually true.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's our what's working and what we want to review with you guys. Content blocking, content calendars and editorial calendars, and also repurposing in real time to save yourself basically time at the end of the day. And the one key nugget from my experience in content, if I could give that to you, is just it needs to be more like 50-50 in terms of 50% production and 50% marketing that content that you've made. Please do not spend all this time writing blog posts and then just publish them and be like, done. Like, that's so sad. It could really do much more for you.
That's right. Yeah, make partnerships with people. Reach out to people. Talk to other bloggers. There's a lot of tactics that are simple, and you can get more refined with it. But it really is quite as simple as Google searching, say, your top 10 terms, finding people that have similar content, reach out to the writer, see if there's a way that you can be included as a link, include them as a link in yours.
If you don't have, Google's a great way to do it, or on obviously social media searches, but if you do have access to any sort of tools, Ninja Outreach and BuzzSumo are also great tools for finding other publishers and niches and things like that for guest blogging.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ninja Outreach does come at a cost with BuzzSumo. But again, if you're budget limited, if you're a startup, there's search. Google and there's Bing and Yahoo.
But they're out there too.
They're out there too. You can find different results in those search engines as well. All kidding aside, Bing is a very powerful. It still has almost 40% market share.
It's number 3 behind YouTube. Search engines?
No, it's ahead of YouTube.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've got a pretty substantial market share now with because they've integrated Windows 10 and Xbox and everything else, so their searches have increased a bit. But not to discount the other ones. I guess the point being is that, and YouTube's a really great example too, that people don't think of YouTube as a search engine, but in fact it is. It's a social network and search engine. So think outside the box a little bit. Think about Bing, think about Yahoo, think about all the other types of searches that people can find you rather than just Google. But I mean, they're all there for you, for sure. All right, so staying right on schedule-ish.
As we segue into what's new for this week.
That's right.
So yeah, some exciting things and what's happening this week. One thing we want to discuss was one a very popular app that you've probably used before is Waze. One of the top competitors for Google Maps and things like that. Is it? Or is
it's not particularly since Google owns Waze.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not then. My mistake.
I think it actually, you would consider it probably internally. They consider it a competitor.
That's kind of funny. I would just, I should just assume Google owns everything now.
Probably.
Yeah, or Facebook. To be honest with you, one of the two of them is purchasing everything.
But yeah, the key new feature is that they've actually rolled out local ads. So in 3 different types of formats. Basically, if you do any advertising on AdWords, they're probably going to be similar formats you've seen before. One is a map pin ad that you can have, where your logo comes up with a destination. Maybe we can put, they've got the mock-ups there. There we go. So we've got the map pin ad. Thank you, producer Dan. And we also have the search results ad as well. So when you search, you come up as a preferential search, much like AdWords search would function. And the third, they're calling it like a speed, like an instant takeover, which is basically akin to like a display ad. So that you can have what's equivalent to kind of like a banner ad that would come up on your screen instantaneously. And as you can see, they're kind of take over a portion of it. But what I was more so interested in, those are all kind of familiar advertising formats, very exciting as an advertiser, but in that the way that they're selling it is like kind of in a plan model. So they have like a basic model that they're saying is around, you could spend about $2 per day, or they have a plus, like more advanced model where you could spend about $100 per day. So that's kind of the interesting part, in that you're not paying per campaign, you're more so paying like for locations and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and just to give people that may not be familiar with Waze a little bit of context. So Waze is a really interesting app, and I found out about it a number of years ago before they were purchased by Google, and I was using it long before. I basically ditched Google Maps and Apple Maps and my car navigation for Waze, and basically what it is it's social maps. So you see other Wazers, and if there's an accident, I'm assuming people don't do it while they're driving, but it's very easy to report an accident, slow traffic. So it's social mapping, and the theory was always human beings are going to be better than other systems because we're all on the road. So if I say I see that accident, the next person comes along and says, no, the accident's cleared immediately. And that's how Waze works. You basically have a friends list. You can see your friends. It's kind of cool with my wife. What I do is I can honk at her when it says I'm on my way home. I'll be home in the estimated time. And then it will, like, you can say where you are. So if you're carpooling against other people, and you're all going somewhere, it's really easy to see where everybody else in your group is. So it's kind of cool. And that the really cool thing from a marketer's perspective about Waze is that it has a lot of interaction. So if you've got a brick and mortar business and you're trying to drive people to your location, Waze is an awesome option. It's probably even better than Google Maps, because Google Maps is very one-on-one, right? Like you search it, you look for it. With Waze, it's much more interactive because I can see my friends and stuff. So definitely really interesting for events. The banner one on the right-hand side, the banner format on the right-hand side has been available for a while, but not to SMBs. It's been kind of a private thing. So you would see Tim Hortons, for example, and some of the larger brands on there. And
that is kind of the general recommendation that's coming out of this, is that if you're, a franchise, it's ideal for you. If you have multiple locations in different cities, things like that, that's very much kind of what it's focused on. But yeah, I think that in terms of the height of intent, which is very much what digital advertising is focused on, I think that it's a great idea and a great concept, because people are traveling on the go all the time. And, whether, obviously you can do different targeting settings depending on the platform you're using, but a Waze app is always with them, like whether they're in that location or not. So I think that that's some of the advantages, and that'd be really interesting to test out.
Yeah, and if you're, I think one of the things, if you've got a live event, and we're getting into kind of festival season and things like that,
for sure.
With a live event, you could be promoting on there for a month before the event and then heavily during the event to make sure people can get there. So certainly a different option that probably a lot of digital marketers haven't considered, because Waze has always been kind of, it's not accessible as easily through AdWords, for example. It's not part of that, right? Okay, so.
Yeah, that was one of our updates from this week. Another exciting thing we were going to talk about today was just the speed update that everyone's been discussing. So in terms of Google, obviously we've mentioned it before on the live here in terms of the fact that there's been big updates to the algorithm in that desktop and mobile are split and there are different indexes for them now. And people are just discussing a lot. As someone who has been working in SEO day in, day out, is really no surprise to me in that they're calling it this, the speed update, because site loading time and page speed has always been a very heavily weighted indicator in terms of search. And I think we all know that in terms of mobile and just the way things are going and the instantaneous nature of things, then obviously it's going to be heavily weighted. We've discussed on the program before, I know AMP, Accelerated Mobile Pages, it's a project backed by Google, and it's just that. It's to make sure that you can instantly have pages and blog posts delivered to you without any load time whatsoever. So it's kind of, across the board in SEO, it's very much the name of the game. So this is kind of just in detail, people discussing what can you actually do right now. Like if I'm looking at my site and my page load time is like 8 seconds and all of my mobile traffic is just bouncing away and no one's engaging. Like what do you do about that now? And I think that's kind of the question for people. Yeah. And there's really, obviously, there's a lot of things you can do, but I think that Google's also implemented some tools and things like that that can really help you out and basically produce a list for you of here's the list of 20 odd, maybe even longer than that, things that you need to implement. A varying degree, like sometimes you might need someone who is really technical and can do it, like this guy over here, and sometimes it's more of a content thing. But yeah, there's a lot of different elements.
There are a lot of different elements to page speed. Just a couple of simple things that you can do to vastly increase the speed of your page is purchase a good quality host and invest the money in it. So get away from, and no offense to HostGator or Bluehost, the $3.99 a month special, that is going to be on a shared server that's very old with limited resources, that's going to tank, that's not going to give you something fast. If you're running WordPress, a really good option is WP Engine. Basically what that is a web host that only specializes in WordPress, and what that'll allow you to do is they do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of specifically WordPress customizations, so you'll get all of those benefits of having an IT and a technical team without the overhead and the cost, and they build a lot of that into it. That's the first thing is, $50 a month if it's your business. I would venture to say you should be spending $300 to $400 a month and really beef up your server. It's not necessarily the right thing to do, but that can help mitigate a lot of the other problems by throwing resources at it, right? So
for sure,
that's one way. The second way is go through your site and reduce all of the image sizes that you have throughout the site. It's a common thing to have a 4 or 5 megabyte image JPEG uploaded for absolutely no reason.
Yes, make sure your image is the size that you intend it to be when you put it on the page. If you're inserting a giant image and then resizing it down, like shrinking it down to be its proper size, you're spending time loading that huge graphic just to render it in that small box. So that's the small thing that you can do in terms of just making sure they're exported properly for web, and then also that they're the proper size. But yeah, there's a lot of little things like that. The Google, what is the name? I forget now. The Google tool where it actually gives you the report.
So page speed.
Yeah, and it's basically, if you could sign up for it, it will actually run a test for you and give you a list basically of recommendations. Yeah, so in this
particular case study that that you can see on the screen right now, this is abadday.com. This is obviously the writer was prepping it for this, but you can see that optimized images in the Google page speed tool is usually one of the top issues that people do have. A lot of the other elements when you start to get into web server configuration, for example, you'll see on the screen here, enable compression down near the bottom. That, for example, would be enabled on a host like WP Engine by default, so you don't have to worry about that. Lastly, the one thing that you could do, which I would strongly suggest, and it really depends on the capabilities, is have a mobile app. And the reason for having a mobile app for iOS or for Android is that your search ranking results will come up for the app. And there are a number of tools you can use that actually allow you to push out an app to the App Store for as little as $9.99 a month. And it is your website. So if you were to do that, and the Google mobile first world, I don't know if you've Googled anything recently on your phone, you'll often see there's small panels of the apps that are associated with that search result. And again, that allows the consumer, one, you'll rank number one for it. Two, Google will give preference and deference to mobile apps on mobile devices. So, it's something to certainly look at.
For sure.
Especially if you're e-commerce, right? Got a Shopify store. It's very easy to plug in and to get mobile apps that will help a lot. And sorry, just as the final point, if you are hosting your own e-commerce site, you have a lot heavier of a load when you're running e-commerce on your own host, and it can get very slow. If you're doing that, you definitely want to look at WP Engine or a Shopify or BigCommerce or Samcart. Like, there's a lot of different options there, but a hosted solution, you pay for the speed. So for example, with Shopify, I know they invest a lot of time and effort into ensuring that all Shopify stores are fast. So definitely something. And Enrique is saying DremPress is 50% less expensive. Well, that's good.
There you go, snagging the deals.
There you go. Yeah, always the deals.
All right.
Next up.
Yeah, last but not least, we just wanted to touch on this. It's obviously, we've already discussed it in depth in the past on the live, but just some results are coming in from this backlash of the Facebook drama and the saga that has been going on throughout last month and continues to ruin Zuckerberg's life basically every day.
From the op-ed section.
I'm just saying, I'm sure this storm will pass. Everyone's got bad days, but I would not want to be him right now.
Yeah.
More like a bad month.
But yeah, really. But the stat that we are discussing is specifically that they've done some consumer research based on the recent issues that have come out around privacy. And basically they found that as of right now, about 8% of people have said that they've deleted their Facebook because of the Cambridge Analytica scandal or whatever you want to call it. And then about 45% have said that they will intend to use Facebook less because of it. So interesting. We were kind of discussing about where these numbers came from and the validity of them and who these 8% people actually are who deleted it. I know obviously there have been some key celebrities and large companies that have made it publicly, acknowledged that they've deleted their Facebook presence. We were discussing how Playboy randomly took a stand and deleted their Facebook presence.
Odd thing to take a stand on, but okay, I'll take it.
Why not?
Thanks for being the moral flagship, Playboy. But anyway,
I'm not even going there. Yeah, I think one of the things is that it started with Tesla. Are you okay?
I'm good. I'm laughing at my own jokes.
Yes. Courtney's laughing at her own jokes. It started with Tesla, and basically what Elon Musk had said was, look, they never bought Facebook advertising. They never really did much on Facebook in the first place, which was kind of true. They did live broadcast their Falcon X and SpaceX launches, but Tesla themselves really didn't do too much, so he was like, I'm deleting it. And a bunch of others are following suit. I think it's a little bit cart before the horse, because if you're using that logic, then you should be deleting your website or de-indexing it completely from all things Google, because Google is in fact collecting more information than Facebook does. Now, I think it's backlash. There's a bunch of backlash happening. The cold, harsh reality, whether anybody wants to hear it or not, is the fact that this didn't start with Facebook and it's not ending with Facebook. This is literally pretty much every company that was born out of Silicon Valley is doing this. Android and Google had a serious number of issues about 1.5 years ago with privacy. Probably one of the stronger ones, and I know they're playing it on the PR angle right now. Apple is, if you just update it to iOS 11.3, you'll note that the first thing is a giant "We respect your privacy" screen. They're playing up the PR of it, although I will say that Apple's probably slightly better and has been slightly better in a number of ways. But the cold reality of the entire situation is all of these companies are doing exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I've actually been receiving emails from different companies things like that I use and I'm a consumer for, saying like reassurances about privacy and how they use your information. So even if that isn't what your company, like that isn't a part of their business at all, but you still for some reason are, you know, housing personal information for them, it's still, you know, it's still creating skepticism, it's still creating suspicion. So really this isn't just a Facebook thing, and to Dan's point, this isn't a standalone event. This is the privacy saga and the story of it, which is going to continue and is really, not in this day and age really anything new. I think everyone, you know, has heard many discussions about these kinds of things coming about from every year. You know, there's usually a poster child and someone who gets put up there and gets the spotlight of media, but I'm sure this is just going to be a chapter in Facebook's history.
I think you know, there's going to be regulation that comes out of it, which is good, because basically, you know, what's happened thus far is a bunch of people in Washington that don't know anything about technology have been told, and it's true, it's shocking and it's saddening that people that are writing the legislation have no idea, not even a kernel of what this all means until this whole thing happened, right? So there's going to be legislation that comes down in the States and in Canada, and the GDPR in Europe is a very strong hammer that's coming into effect May 25th that is going to affect apps and websites, anything digital. But at the end of the day, you've had the control, consumers have had the control, and there's a pretty interesting walkthrough that one guy did on Twitter about how he downloaded all of his data, found it, and how he turned it off. You can actually go into, and it's not easy to find, but you can do it. You can set all of your preferences in there. But what happened with Washington is Silicon Valley and the large companies basically said, trust us, you know, don't be evil. We're not going to be bad. Trust us with your stuff. And the reality is, and I think as much as I love digital marketing, everything, I wouldn't trust a corporation with that statement, because there's so many people and things that happen inside of a corporation with your data and your privacy. So I think what's going to happen is a backlash. And look, people saying they're not going to use Facebook, I don't really buy that. You know, that's there's a College Humor video about if someone leaving Facebook were at a party. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
No, I haven't.
We should actually post it up on the page after this. And basically, you know, there's a guy in a cocktail party stands up and goes, "Everybody, I'm leaving now because you're annoying me." But he never actually leaves for about 5 minutes. And then he comes right back in immediately after this gigantic speech about leaving. And these apps are so sticky. They're so sticky. Like the minute that you see your friend's, you know, newborn baby or a cute puppy or whatever, some will leave for sure. Some will leave, but the majority, I don't believe, will. In fact,
and this always happens. It's not just Facebook. Like with the other month when Kylie deleted her Snapchat.
Oh, and then Snapchat shares,
and then the other, and then
egads.
It's just like, oh my, and then didn't PewDiePie delete his YouTube account the other year too? It's
that
like,
was a fake. That was a fake trick. That wasn't his actual. He had 3 accounts. He deleted.
I'm just saying. From time to time, people do this on the personal level. I have like people I know that are like, I'm done with this, and then like next month they're on Instagram again. But you know, on a corporate level as well. So.
Well, I think too, like your point too about earlier we were saying about finding how they're taking your data and like all the data and being able to delete it. I keep seeing a lot of clickbait coming out, being like, find out how to find your data, and there's a lot of that coming out now too.
You can go to the Facebook Help Center. So anybody that says I have an app to help you delete your data, don't trust that. There's this thing called the Help Center on Facebook, and they do have a number of really good walkthroughs. Now, admittedly, it's spread over 12 different locations, but it's all in there. So if you spend the time to do it, you can do it. The thing is, I think most people never do it, and this is the problem with security. It's security versus convenience. And if anybody ever said, like, do the easy thing or do the hard thing, 99% of the time, everybody's going to be lazy and just do the easy and be like, whatever, right?
Yep.
Until they find out that Facebook Messenger, because they agreed to the terms of service, and is why I don't use Messenger on my iPhone. Facebook Messenger scans all of your images and all of your text messages and sends that data back to Facebook because you've agreed to it. And any message that you send, they scan and they archive it completely on Facebook's servers. So I mean, that's actually in the terms of service for it, and people are shocked after I didn't read that though, but I clicked it. So, you know,
My life isn't that interesting.
it's
You
yes.
guys can see my messages to my friends. That's fine.
There you go. There you go. That is one approach to security, is saying, hey, you know, you've got it all. But you can actually turn off a lot of the things that would be funneling. For quite a while, you've been able to turn off a lot of the things that would be funneling information to apps and things like that.
It's just taking the time to actually do that, which again, most times people are like, too long, didn't read.
And I think most of this has just been a big eye-opener, really, right? Is that people have always heard this whole, like, Big Brother, they're collecting information, but if you can't see how it impacts you literally on a day-to-day basis, how much are you going to care? You know, and that's kind of what we're getting at, whether you know, have to go all through all these setups and change all your settings to protect your privacy, or just press accept. You know, if there's no direct result to your day-to-day life, what are you going to do? And I think a lot of people, just like I said before, especially the younger generations, just barreled ahead and just inherently use social media as part of their day-to-day life. You know, without realizing that.
I've said this for many years because I've always been I get really annoyed when it's social media gets a pat on the head and like run along. That's really cute and adorable. It's for a long time, it's been extremely powerful, and it's been people have really underestimated how powerful social media is. It's the most powerful thing that's come out of the internet, and arguably in the history of that technology. And I think what's happening now is people that didn't see the power of it, and maybe saw the power of it. So someone like Donald Trump, for example, many years ago said, I see power in Twitter. And it's true. There is power in that, right? There's influence in that. But I think what people didn't realize was the power that's contained when it's manipulated and how it affects masses of people. You know, where 10 years ago we were affected by television. And now we're affected by social media and in very personal ways. So there's a lot of power in there. And I think people are trying to figure out, both the creators of it, the users of it, the governments, politicians, businesses, everyone's trying to find out how this dynamic is going to work, because it's really not going to go anywhere. Yeah. It's not like Facebook's going to like throw their hands up and say, yeah, that's it, we're done. And Google's not going to walk away and go, no problem, no, we're good, bye. But it's going to change. It's going to adapt, right?
Can you imagine? We good. Google just turns off.
Later.
That would be a great April Fool's joke if Google just had like a close sign on
Or
Google.com.
a 404 when you go to Google.
Oh, yeah.
Like they would never do. I don't know to what end, but it would be hilarious.
Mass panic.
Courtney's going to go home and start hacking. Take them down. So anyways, yeah, lots of interesting things, but you know, from the perspective of marketing and communications, because of all of the limitations that are coming down now, it's even more important to keep engaged and be engaging, try different things out. You know, I'll point to this little live stream that we started 21 episodes ago. That this has come a long way, and it takes consistency. You have to be persistent in doing it. You're not just going to snap your fingers and it's going to work the first time. You gotta keep at it, for sure.
Yeah, and you just have to make the time. Like we've discussed, I believe you told me about this idea like a year and a half ago, Dan.
Yeah.
2 years ago, potentially. We should do a live stream. And, you know, it's just a matter of actually committing to it. And the time will not be made unless, like, you won't find the time unless you make the time, basically.
Yeah. Courtney's starting to sound like me. Well, sometimes the only way to do it is just to do it. Like, and it sounds stupid, but it's true. It's like you're never going to play the piano if you keep reading a book about playing the piano. You got to play the piano, and it sounds really ridiculous, but it's also extremely true. So when you're doing your social media marketing, you're doing your email marketing, you're trying to grow your e-commerce store, you're trying to grow your business, whatever it is, persistence and consistency is the number one key to success. It's not going to be some silver bullet that you're finally going to be like, yes, now I'm, multi-million-dollar company. It's going to take a long, long time and a lot of time in the trenches, and that's just how them's the way she goes, Bubs. If you ever watched her. It's my Trailer Park Boys.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. All righty. Does anybody have anything else?
We're rounding up on 5:10. I know we were gonna I don't know if we were going to talk about seasonality or we'll leave that for the next episode.
Well, I think that's got to be in the next episode now.
Yeah, I think so. I think we chatted.
Well, I saw it. I had the script even up on the... I had our schedule.
You can see it's legit.
You just jumped it.
Yeah,
This poor little guy here has been skipped for now 2 weeks.
Seasonality and trending topics. We will discuss it. It is happening.
Yes, we will. We will. But anyhow, everybody, thanks a lot for joining. I know there might be some questions on Periscope and YouTube, but we will get replying to those as well as on Facebook. But our new improved stream seems to have been a success, unless there's been no audio the entire time or something like that, which would be funny.
Imagine.
The team hasn't flagged it.
We just have to dub it. That's okay. Anyways, all right. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you next week for episode 22, where we will have 3D graphics or something crazy. Because we have to do it every week.
Have a good weekend.